Hey, nice to see a friendly face. You got the time to hang around for a bit? Might as well. The weather's good for it. You know, I've been thinking of some things lately, so I hope you don't mind if I ramble on for a bit. Though, I think I'd like to start with a question first. What sort of ship would you have if you were to travel the stars? Would it be one from a show, a movie, a book, or some other bit of fiction? Would it come from reality or your imagination? I wonder if you would even have a preference. The answer might come quickly to you. It might depend on more details, like if you'll have a crew, need to haul cargo, or even fly about in a dogfight here and then. For me, the answer depends on one simple thing. Is this a place I'm expected to live? Beyond the needs of any good spaceship, like getting me from one planet to another, keeping the oxygen inside, and not blowing up, it needs to be a place I can live. In most sci-fi, spaceships are treated like cars. They're sleek, cool, state-of-the-art, and immaculately clean. They look lovely in the brochure, especially with all the shiny chrome. But they'd never actually be a place I'd want to live. And when they're not looking brand new, they're instead industrial behemoths that resemble factories crammed inside submarines. I'm not saying that any of these designs are bad though. They work in the stories they're from and are made to fit a purpose. But I just think that if I'm going to be spending a lot of time in one, I'd want one with more than just the necessities. Don't just give me an oxygenated capsule that's not as cold as the vacuum of space. Give me something I can take a breather in. Something warm and comforting. The equivalent of a beanbag by a fireplace. Not an office chair wrapped in foil. Stories set in space often make the spaceship a place where all the characters live, but they never really feel lived in. Instead, all the ships end up being is a cool looking backdrop where everyone can shout some high-tech mumbo-jumbo at each other. Sci-fi stories can often feel cold and inhuman, an almost perfect reflection of the metal vessels where they're often filled by. Which is a little sad. After all, sci-fi is based on a wild fantasy to do what is once thought impossible. The universe and everything which can be found within it can often be unsettling, which makes it even more remarkable that we're even here at all. A lot of our existence can be attributed to random chance and pure luck, which can bring with it some sense of dread. Just as easily as we arrived in this universe, we could see ourselves leaving it. When it comes to exploration, that too comes with its paradoxical fear, one of the unknown. But it's quite possibly the reason why we push ourselves to go as far as we do. We explore the world and the universe not without fear, but in spite of it. Perhaps that joy of discovery wouldn't be there if we didn't have any reason to be afraid. Because exploration is about going into the unknown and finding a new place of comfort. When we explore and make our discoveries about the world, they change our understanding of it. Over your life, you slowly realize just how wrong you can be when you take everything at face value. What at first seems static and unchanging might be gone the very second you look away. A solid surface might be ready to crumble the instant you set foot upon it. All those first impressions can be so deceiving. And when you look a little closer, you discover something beneath the surface, which you could never have guessed was there to begin with. Something which can be forgotten far too easily is the past. And I mean more than just the dot points and timelines of history books and records. Because history isn't just the major events, the key figures and a list of dates. For example, think for a moment about how you might be remembered as a part of history. You'd quickly become a summary of events and historical footprints inside larger stories. Which feels a little lacking, doesn't it? For you, your life is a collection of emotions, small interactions and relationships. From what we leave behind, save a journal entry or home video, an archaeologist would be hard-pressed to understand who you were as a person. The past was more than just the setting of battles and events, more than a prelude to our present. It was the home of those from before us. All the trivialities of our lives were just as much a part of theirs as well. When you walk through a set of ruins, focus on the smaller things, the parts of which you could imagine yourself a part of. Recognize the homes, schools, and markets. These places existed because those people lived in the same way that we do now. There was someone just like you in the past. A lot of fiction can get this wrong. The ruins can be simply reduced to set dressing, meaningless lore. They create a version of the past, which is only there to fill in the gaps, not as a result of the world. Individuals can be written as complex and empathetic. They didn't need to be important to be remembered. What will we end up being remembered as? Have you ever watched an old TV show long after it's left the air? Soon enough, you might even forget that the show had ended long before you started watching it. Then you reach the finale, and it comes to an end because, of course, that was always going to happen. It's been over for years. You've just finally caught up. How many times in a game do you find journals or recordings from characters in the past? Eventually, you run out of recordings, and you get to the inevitable ending. They end up being dead, and they had been for a while. The strangest part of all this is, after this discovery, you might start to ask yourself a question that isn't likely going to give you an answer. How many times have you passed the body of the author? How often have you walked over the grave of someone whose words you were listening to as you did so? Will you ever know which of the bodies was theirs? On a cosmological scale, I don't matter. Hardly a flattering thing to think about. It can be a scary thought for many. And some will spend years outright rejecting it. While we don't have any inherent reason to exist, that doesn't mean we can't provide one for ourselves. While the universe doesn't care either way what I do or what happens to me, I do. This small existence is everything to me. Everything ends. We leave this world and are eventually forgotten. This is how it is for everyone and everything. I hope that those who follow are a little like us. That they feel the need to explore despite their fears. That they see our history as more than a simple chain of events. And that just maybe a trip among the stars can be as trivial as a camping trip. I hope they have a warm ship that feels like home. I think I've rambled on for long enough now. I'll see you around. Enjoy the light show.